Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News. Kia ora, Chewy. You doing well, sir?
Hello, Patrick. Yes. Oh, do I do a fake Irish accent later in the week?
Later in the week. Friday is my day.
I don't want to do it too. I don't want to peak too early.
No, Friday. But remember, if you're not Irish, we don't believe in cultural appropriation. So if you are not connected to the Emerald Isles, like some of us are, you are not entitled to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. Remember, cultural appropriation not okay. St. Patrick's Day belongs to us Irish. So
I'm assuming that you're going door to door through the student area. Just to remind people of that this week.
Yeah, no one's allowed to wear green. Don't mock my culture by being leprechauns hats. None of that stuff is allowed. No, not allowed. In no shape whatsoever, not allowed. If you've ever said to anybody, if you've ever criticized anyone about cultural appropriation of anything, then unless you're Irish, you are not allowed to celebrate St. Paddy's Day. I don't care. Anyway, how are you, man? Things going well? Good day?
Yeah, not too bad. Quiet day today.
I had a super busy day today. I've told you guys last week I've been doing another podcast with with a mate of mine, but I'm sort of doing it as a in my studio, using my studio for other people to use to do podcasting. And we did another one today, and it's going really well. He's the charts that he's in. He's got to number 3 in the charts for this podcast, so it's pretty cool actually. It's a good time. And what else did I do today? A whole bunch of emailing, because hopefully everyone watching, as a prerequisite to watching tonight, have watched my Michelle Acourt or listened to my Michelle Acourt whatever that's called, podcast. And so I'm now filling up more people. Hey, speaking of, we haven't even talked about this. The Last of Us. Do we want to do that now?
Yes,
should we do that at the end of the show, because we've got to get
we should do that towards the end.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
We can talk about the laughter bus.
And that was the series finale this week, eh?
It was, and now I feel adrift in the sea.
Last of Us. I'm writing it down just so I can forget to look at that page later on and then not talk about it. That's what I'll do. But I have written it down, so the intention is there. So if you're a fan of Last of Us and you've watched the last episode, we'll talk about that towards the end of the show. If you haven't watched the last episode, then we're going to spoil it for you, because that's what we do. Hey, thanks to all of our beautiful patrons. If you want to be involved in what we do, if you want to get along and support what we're doing, overtly and bluntly approaching the world from a perspective on the left-hand side of politics. Doesn't mean we all think the same on the left-hand side of politics, but it's where we approach the world from. As far as we know, we're really the only group in New Zealand at the moment doing this on a regular, semi-daily basis, talking politics with a left perspective. But as we always say, and I know that some of our patrons are actually not necessarily left voters, because we call each ball on its merits and we walk and chew gum at the same time. Have to say that once every show. Once every show we have to say that. So if you want to be involved, real super simple, then head to patreon.com/Big Hairy News and be a part of the team. Be a part of the team. So when we go out on Friday night to celebrate St. Paddy's Day, there's some money in the account to get some Guinness. I think that's what I'll get my Paddy's Irish whiskey. I should have had this out all week. Where is it? Here we go. I'll just sit this just here. Is that an appropriate place to sit it for the whole week? Does that work?
Absolutely.
Right there?
It's very subtle from a product placement point of view.
Paddy's Irish whiskey. Subtle. I've told you about this. When my mum passed away in 2018, real good, because her maiden name was Mulligan, so the Irish blood runs pretty thick. A mate of mine in Auckland, this is what he bought me. He bought me Paddy's Irish whiskey, and he bought me half dozen Guinness. Which is kind of cool. It's kind of cool. And I know a lot of you are saying, well, they haven't drunk much of it. I'm not a huge whiskey drinker, but emphasis on the whiskey part not being huge, not the person. So yes, it is still there. All right. Hey, we're also going to have a little bit of a look at a few other things tonight. The National Party is having to get out and voice their support for their hairless leader, because some people are saying he's slipping in the pee-holes, and that might be a problem. I mean, he's been doing it for a year, and his latest poll result was the same as his first poll result. Some people are saying that's not a very good sign.
Sounds pretty desperate.
Okay. So we're going to talk about what the national MPs are saying at the moment. Also, there's a bit of a hubbub between Labor and National at the moment basically Labor giving the dictionary definition of National wanting to look after big business, and National going, "We're so offended you said that." That's what I've looked at that. And actually, a really interesting little small story about something going on in Iran at the moment. Iranian girls sort of taking over Iran and giving the middle finger to a bunch of the religious zealots over there. So we'll have a quick look at that as well as we go through. But here's where we're going to start tonight. We're going to invite onto the show Claire Inslee. Claire Inslee is from the Vegan Society of Aotearoa, New Zealand, and we'll get Claire on first, shall we? G'day, Claire. How are you?
Kia ora. Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
And the reason, yeah, very good. The reason we've got you on is Chewy and I are based in Dunedin. I don't know if that was clear to you when I asked you guys to come on, but we're Dunedin based, and I saw an interesting story today from your society, the Vegan Society, asking our mayor, our not particularly left-wing mayor, to make Dunedin New Zealand's first plant-based city. Let me read a little bit out from the press release. It says, this is actually what you said to the mayor. It's important for our leaders to be showing the way, walking the talk, and actually taking actions in their own lives to help mitigate climate change. It is a global problem that requires a global solution, with all individuals taking their share of the responsibility and taking effective action. Going plant-based is more effective than cycling to work or recycling. It requires no special technology. It can be done by anyone at any time. So let's just rip into this. And first of all, kind of explain to us why a city, and I don't know what it means to go plant-based. Not that I don't understand what a plant-based diet is, but for a city to go plant-based, what does that actually mean, and why are you picking on Dunedin?
Okay, I'll answer your last question first. We're
Sure.
picking on Dunedin because Edinburgh, which is your sister city, has recently endorsed the plant-based treaty, which is
Right.
what we're asking Dunedin to do. Now, the plant-based treaty for cities is basically an initiative where globally, and there's 20 other cities that have taken part in this and endorsed this treaty already, that we're trying to get as many people on board this whole idea of that basically our food systems need to change. And there's been an awful lot of research, whether you like it or not. The fact remains that going vegan is one of the most effective ways of mitigating climate change that you can do realistically in your own life. It's something that we all do. We all eat. We eat 3 times a day at least, if we're lucky. And that's a change that you can make with every mouthful of food, basically. So every meal you can make a new change, a new choice to actually help mitigate climate change. So that's essentially why we've taken that stance, and why we're getting cities on board to do that as well.
Okay. And what does it actually mean? Like to obviously you guys, or the mayor or anyone can't force, for example, McDonald's not to sell Big Macs. So what does it mean practically when you say a city going plant-based?
So the treaty has 3 core principles, which are to relinquish, which means no land use change, ecosystem degradation or deforestation for conventional animal agriculture. So it's
Okay.
basically trying to reduce animal agriculture. And yes, many cities don't exactly have a lot of animal agriculture in the city, but it depends how wide your borders are and how far you go. You may have some farmland included. So there are things that you could do potentially. Redirect is the next one, which is an active transition from animal-based food systems and towards plant-based food systems. So that can be as simple as
You need to expand on that. What do you mean by that redirect? I'm thinking about the mayor and the council. Give us an example of what you mean by redirect. Like redirect what and how to the businesses, and or are you just talking about the council becoming plant-based? Like this is what I'm trying to how this would practically work.
Yeah, I mean it's not like we're expecting people to go down the streets and slap clothes stickers on all your butchers and McDonald's and everything. That's not that's not what we're expecting here. But there are certain things that cities can do, like they can engage with their residents and suggest that they eat more plant-based things. They can do things like make community gardens that grow vegetables. They can make it very easy. They can provide plant-based options in all the public buildings. If there's a jail in your vicinity, which, all these kinds of things that can happen. Hospitals, for example, could offer more vegan food. I've certainly heard a number of horror stories from vegans trying to eat vegan in Dunedin Hospital. So yeah, there's a lot of things that could be done, and it's basically trying to promote a shift towards more healthy, sustainable plant-based diets, and to actively reverse the damage that's been done to our planetary functions. And obviously, there's only certain things that any one city can do. So it's a case of do what you can in your area to support this treaty.
I think you said there was 3 things. There was no deforestation. There was redirect.
Yes,
what was the third thing?
Yes, restore. So actively restore key ecosystems, particularly restoring forests and rewilding landscapes. Particularly if you have actually managed to convince a farm to change what they're doing, and so all the land that was being used to farm sheep, for example, could then be rewilded with native bush, as an example.
So it sounds like what I'm hearing you saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is that getting a council, any entity to sign on to this is basically a symbolic gesture that we're going to encourage and try and do better. Is that really what it is? I mean, there's nothing binding. There's nothing you can force, or there's nothing that's binding by this.
No, there's no legally binding thing.
Yeah.
By endorsing the plant-based treaty, you're not signing up to commit Dunedin to, closing down the McDonald's, for example. There's nothing, there's no legally binding thing. But it shows. Let's see, what did Dunedin? What did Edinburgh have to say on it? They said that it was something that they wanted to do to prove their council's commitment to mitigating climate change. Fossil fuels and food systems are the most biggest drivers of climate change at the moment. So yeah, and there's 20 other cities that have taken this on board as well, including Los Angeles.
Yeah, probably not many farms in Los Angeles, eh?
Well, no, you see, and this is what I'm saying. It's like, it's not that that nothing's legally binding, and we're not, making anybody do anything, but we can certainly go a lot further in promoting the ideas of plant-based, of transitioning towards a plant-based economy, or that kind of thing. And we're just not doing enough at the moment.
One of the people watching right now, Freesoul, asked the question, why vegan and not just vegetarian? When you're talking about, I mean, it sounds like the sell here from you guys is primarily climate change. Like lots of the times when we hear from, vegan outfits or activists or protests or encouragements, it's based around, a person's health, or it's based around the health of the animal. It sounds like your big push for this primarily, I'm not saying it's not including some of those other things from your perspective, but it sounds like your big push is climate change. So yeah, why not, as Freesoul says, why not just push for vegetarian? I guess it's because you're not vegetarian society, you're the vegan society, eh? I guess that's what the answer is.
Well, there is that, but also, dairy is our biggest emissions in Aotearoa. So to say, oh yeah, no, it's fine, it's not true. Particularly here in Aotearoa, that is our main source of emissions, is the dairy industry. So yeah, that's why not vegetarian, because the dairy industry is massive.
Have you heard any response back from the mayor or from anyone in council at all?
Not at this point, no. We just got the standard. Your mayor has honestly received this email. He gets so many, who knows if he's actually going to read this one. Doesn't say that, but that's essentially what it says.
Well, it sounds to me that it's a pretty easy win if he does read it. Just yeah, as Pat says, it's kind of a symbolic, we should all try harder sort of thing.
It is. I mean, if he was to go and have a look and see what Edinburgh Council has pulled up, it'd be interesting that potentially for them to see what they've gone into. And the fact is that C40 Cities in 2019 released a report that said that the city's biggest source of urban-based emissions, is food, the food systems. So that's where, therefore, any city's opportunity lies, is in getting people to transition more towards a plant-based diet.
Why do you think that no one in Australasia has taken this up yet? I mean, New Zealand must have 20 cities, maybe more, maybe 30, which means if Australia is 7 times our size, they may have 200 cities based on population. And so let's say there's 200 cities total in those two countries. Why do you think no one's, if it is a good idea and it's a good symbolic idea and it would be a good bumper sticker for a city, why is no one doing it?
It's a great question. I'd love to know the answer to that. I really would. Perhaps they don't know about it. Perhaps they don't take climate change as seriously as they should. I do know that with the storms in the North Island, climate change has suddenly become, as everyone's, oh my gosh, the climate really is changing. Oh, we've not had these terrible storms quite as badly, and oh wow, maybe they were right. Maybe this thing is a thing after all. So who knows what it's going to take to actually make people understand that they have the power to change things in their own hands right now. Right, and that's said, it's the simplest thing that anyone can do, is to go vegan yourself.
I'd like to ask you one other question. It's a little bit of a side point along the idea of this challenge to the Mayor of Dunedin. It's more about veganism. And Nick has asked a question, not really a question, made a point. I'm a deer hunter next to a national park. The deer overflow every March, April. I have to actively be involved in controlling the numbers and not use the meat. Doesn't sit right with me. So I guess what Kuki's saying is he's involved in a cull from an invasive pest series and then doesn't eat the meat. Which raises the question as well about the origins of this. If we go back a couple of steps, is why be vegan? I mean, we've got the climate change issue. I think that's a good selling point for the veganism message, because if people want to fight climate change and these are the numbers, then that's a good thing. But why did you become vegan? Why do you think it's a good idea?
Me personally, I actually became vegan for the animals. I was vegetarian for quite a while before I became vegan. I'm also quite old, so it's quite a long time ago. So I became vegan in 2000 because it became more obvious to me that being vegetarian wasn't enough. I was still allowing animals to die. Dairy industry kills male calves and female calves. Actually, it's not just males that are bobbies. The egg industry kills all the male chicks. And the animals have a terrible life and all the rest of it. So eventually it became very clear to me that actually being vegetarian wasn't enough to save animals' lives for compassionate reasons. And then also, the whole climate change thing is like, well, actually, that is the best diet for the planet, is to have as much plant-based as possible. Obviously, for vegans, that's 100% plant-based. So the more of us, I mean, I can't force anybody to change their diet. What I'm giving to you is the facts. Okay, 73% of our food emissions could be reduced by going vegan, depending on what you're eating at the first place. And more and more, it just comes out over and over again that actually the biggest thing that's going to make a difference to whether or not we can actually reduce our emissions in time to make realistic things like this massive storm not keep happening over and over again continuously. Worse, oh my god, we can't grow crops anymore now because these storms just keep wiping it out. Is that really what we want? Is that our future that we want? I don't want the future. I want a future where we can actually have our plants sucking up the CO2. We've reduced our methane emissions because we've got rid of all the cows and other ruminant animals, and that we're actually making a real difference.
Cool. Listen, just for my personal interest about where you stand on all these things, like going back to Nick's question as well, if it's not factory farming, and I noticed that the government has just changed legislation recently to stop bobby calf killing, that's now becoming illegal. If it's not factory farming, if it's, for example, hunting goats and killing invasive species and using the meat on your table, are you personally still opposed to that? Because that's not necessarily the animals being treated horrifically like they are in a farm. Obviously, they're still being killed, but to an invasive species that is damaging our ecosystem. How do you personally feel or think about that?
Okay, I'm going to step outside of my vegan society role
Sure.
here.
Go
You've asked me a personal question, and I'm going to actually respond from my heart. And yeah, it is factory farming that is the biggest cause. I personally do not have an issue with someone that goes, and I live on the West Coast, so I'm actually surrounded by hunters and fishermen. I don't like it. I certainly wouldn't partake in the killing or the eating of the flesh afterwards. It's not something I would do, but I would rather someone did that than they go to the supermarket and buy this
Gotcha.
plastic wrap hunk of meat that no longer resembles an animal, that they don't think about as being a creature that wanted to live their life and have their own life. So yeah, I get not everyone can do that and live in that way,
For sure.
but yeah, we put things out of balance, and we need to do some things to put that balance back in.
Yeah, look, as you've been talking, what I've been thinking is, what I hear you saying is, because of our industrialization, be it farming or whatever, we've kind of cocked up the environment. And this is a way that you're suggesting that we could help bring it back into order. I mean, I don't want to have a debate now about, are we designed or evolved to eat meat or not? It's kind of pointless, because what you're saying is, whatever we've done in the past has contributed to it. And now I almost feel like you're saying, if we have to give up meat that way, that's what we have to pay now to fix the environment. That's your selling point. Have I pretty much got that right?
That's my selling point. Yep. It's like, come on, guys. Do you want a planet you can actually live on? Do you want a planet that your children and your grandchildren will be able to live on? This is what it's going to take.
All right. Anything left, Chili? You want any other questions there before we head off, or anything in the chat we want to throw out?
No, I don't have anything in particular. There's certainly a good back and forth going on in the chat at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think certainly for the length of time that you yourself have said that you've been vegan, there must be an enormous amount more choice available. Do you think?
Hugely. I mean, when I first went vegan, so I tried to go vegan back in 1985. It was really actually hard then. That was when it was actually hard. That was when there were no vegan products. They were fruit and vegetables. There's lentils, there's beans. That's it. There was no fancy vegan sausages. There was no fancy vegan bacon. There's no fancy vegan cheese. There wasn't even decent soy milk. Honestly, I took my cereal with orange juice because the soy milk was so awful that it just actually wasn't palatable. So, and I admit I failed. At that point, I failed. But in 2000s, as I said, the overwhelming evidence came to me. And I was like, you know what? I have to go vegan. There's no other choice for me. Climate change, animals, and actually my health. I actually got lots of health benefits from going vegan that weren't there from being vegetarian. So yeah, I would definitely recommend people try it. We have a 21-day vegan challenge. It's really easy. As I said, you make a choice with every bite that you make. So let's make those choices good ones.
All right. Hey, Claire Inslee from the Vegan Society. If people want to find out more about it, just vegansociety.org.nz. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate you. Appreciate your thoughts there. As I said, we're not getting into a debate. There might be some things to do with food that we agree or disagree on, but it's interesting to hear your perspective. And I can see your narrative, right? I can see what you're saying. And that's, I guess, what we've let the punters know about. Cool. Hey, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
No, thank you.
Cheers, Claire.
All right. Yeah, interesting, actually, because as Claire was talking about, that was the vibe I got. It was, you can see what Claire's saying is, we've asked up the environment, and this is a way that we can bring it back. I guess it's like, I almost feel like, and maybe I'm oversimplifying it, sometimes you got to have a bit of pain. You're on a weight loss thing. So you give up those foods that you like for a greater good, for a greater goal. And I can see there's the perspective. Now, I don't know the numbers, so we take Claire's numbers with a grain of salt. Not that we're challenging her, but I always like to deep dive and check them myself. So we will be doing that as well. Anything we want to move in the chat there, Chili?
There were a few interesting comments. Obviously, talked about hunting and that sort of thing. Yeah, I'm surprised by some of the comments in the chat. I'm not going to single people out,
Oh,
but
single them out. No, don't.
I think there's some interesting comments about dooming farmers to extinction and all of this sort of stuff. Farmers are adaptable people. There have always been farmers. They
Yeah,
will
well, hang on.
find something to farm. We are
This
talking
is,
about industrial
and this is the
food
reality. Yeah?
production.
When industry changes, any business adapts or disappears. And farmers are no different. I'm not saying that to negate farmers. I've talked about this before. When my mum was a little baby, they had the Iceman coming around, putting a block of ice into the bottom of their safe that would melt over a week, and that's how they kept their food refrigerated. Then refrigerators became popular. His job went away. When Kodak in the 1990s, all of a sudden digital cameras came around, they had to pivot or they go away. If it changes, if the way we eat food changes, if the way farmers produce food changes, it's not a slight on farmers today. They either adapt and pivot or they go away. That's just business. That's how it works. So it's not a slight on farmers thinking about this. It's like saying to farmers, if it was to go this way, you either adapt, like any business. Feels like sometimes the heartstrings, they're a bit like, because they're farmers and they're providing food and pure New Zealand, this kind of stuff, but they're a business. Business needs to adapt or businesses disappear, and it's no difference if you're a farmer or not.
I mean, I challenge anybody to look at the dairy industry and say that that's okay. Just the level of waste, the level of harm that it has done both to livestock and to the environment. But we are chasing overseas dollars for milk powder. And I think it's gone way too far one way. I think there's also the thing that if you don't go 100% vegan, then why do it at all? I think any sort of reduction is helpful. If everybody had a couple of vegan meals a week, that's still going to make an impact. And then there's a few people in the comments being disparaging about some vegan products, why they're called sausages, etc., etc. They're called that. It's this crazy thing. It's called marketing. And if it makes it, if it makes it more likely that someone is going to pick that product and go, cool, I'll give that a go. Then it's doing its job.
Look, I think there's an ideal that we haven't hit yet. Because I'm sorry, most vegan food tastes like shit. There's very little that actually tastes particularly good. I had vegan boarding with me once, and we really wanted to, make them feel welcome and invite them in. So there's that place in Dunedin on the One Ways, bro. It's the plant-based takeaways, the burger place. It used to be a car yard.
Oh yeah, I've had burgers there.
And we were like, we'll get that, and we'll get that, and we'll check out you. And it was just, so what I would rather do personally, in an ideal world, right? Should my life go in a certain direction, that we have the ability to move to a different sort of property, I'd like to have a little, not maybe a farmlet, but maybe a lifestyle property with a couple of sheep on it and a cow, so I know where my meats come from. I use it. It has some chooks on there as well, because I think it's pretty clear to me, and I think it's pretty clear to anyone, that we have evolved to be omnivores. We have the same teeth as pigs. Pigs are omnivores. That's how we're evolved. Doesn't negate the message that we just heard, that because we've cocked it up, this will be a way to reduce emissions. But I kind of think if we've evolved to be omnivores, then meat is a part of our diet. But I completely abhor factory farming. I'd rather try and remove myself from that. And if people are hunters, you're able to do that, or fishermen, you're able to do that. Maybe some of us could also do that by growing our own meat. I mean, in an ideal world, that's the path I'd try and take. Not there now. Won't be there in the next 5 years, but who knows? Maybe one day in the future. That would be what I try and do.
It's just incredibly frustrating when we're talking about this at this level, right? Everybody can do their part to make a difference for the sake of the planet and the environment. And then you look at going, well, okay, let's say a chunk of the Dunedin population does this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then we turn and look at someone like Fonterra and go, well, how does our efforts stack up with what they're doing? It's just so hard as an individual or even a group of individuals to feel like you're making an impact when you've got companies at that level just shitting on whatever you're trying to do.
Yeah,
it's just frustrating. I think in the chat though, I think Rob's solved it. He's solved it for everyone. We should all start eating the sweetest meat of all, people, specifically the rich. And I think that's a message that we can all get on board with.
All right, it's a good place to leave it. Hey, let's have a look at this story out of Iran. It's a bit of a shocking story, actually. Iranian police are hunting girls who launched a viral Selena Gomez dance trend. Iranian police are hunting for a group of girls who launched a viral Selena Gomez dance trend. The video was posted online last week showing 5 young Iranian women performing a dance routine to the Afro-pop hit Calm Down by Rima and Selena Gomez. The women danced without headscarves in front of tower blocks in a West Tehran housing development that has been a flashpoint of anti-government protests. The next day, a popular Twitter account sharing news from the same place said police have visited looking for the girls. They looked for CCTV footage of Block 13 to identify the girls who were only dancing and not involved in any political activity. Police were seen checking the footage and questioning the guards. Since then, Iranian women across the country have responded by posting videos of themselves performing the dance.
Good stuff.
And so we need to have a look at it to make sure we know what's going on. Here we go. Actually, I might lose the music just because that'll get us booted. So this is the dance. No music though. We'll go.
Well, straight away I can see that this is a clear and obvious threat to the entire Iranian regime.
I'm doing the music in the background.
I'm surprised they didn't send in the army.
And you've listened to the audio podcast. You don't know what's going on. We're watching a video with no sound just because we don't want to get booted off YouTube. So that's the video in question, yeah. And obviously, religious country, and women are supposed to be subjective. It's not subjective. Subjects. Subjugated is probably the best word. And so I don't know. I read that story today, and I kind of was like, Fred Dagg. I was talking to Michelle Acorn, and she talked about how when she was growing up, their whole household knew every Fred Dagg song, and it just makes me think of the song "We Don't Know How Lucky We Are." You're born in a different country, and you're a 17-year-old teenage girl, and you wear you're out with your friends, and you don't wear a headscarf. The police come looking for you. It's a fascinating world we live in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, submissive might be it, Vicky. I think subjugated is probably the right word as well. Vicky just is correcting my dyslexic brain that gets all the words jumbled up.
What's the whole they say modest?
Yeah,
but enforced modesty.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
Activists have hailed the women on the 41-second video for their courage in defying the Islamic Republic's ban on public dancing and strict dress code mandating the wearing of headscarves in public. Opposition to public dress code sparked a nationwide protest movement that started last September after the death in police custody. I'm going to bring the picture back up so you can see it. Of Maisha Amini, a 22-year-old Kurdish woman who was detained for inappropriate attire. Inappropriate attire got her killed in a police cell. Young women removing their headscarves have become a staple of a protest movement that has grown into calls to overthrow the Islamic Republic. Iranian security forces have responded with a crackdown in which rights groups say more than 500 people have been killed and thousands arrested. At least 4 protesters have been executed. Amid a climate of fear in which young women are scared of being targeted by security forces, schoolgirls across the country have reported falling ill, raising fears that they are being deliberately poisoned. While the government is investigating the incidents, several officers have suggested that the illness could be caused by hysteria. Oh, hi.
Hysterical women.
Welcome
Classic.
To the 1950s. In January, a young Iranian couple was reportedly sentenced to 10.5 years in prison for publishing a video of themselves dancing together in Tehran's central Azada or Freedom Square. So in Freedom Square, they got arrested for dancing. Look, I don't want to disparage anybody doing anything here in New Zealand. And look, I don't want to disparage, for example, the the Action for Climate Change, the school marches that we had in New Zealand last week. But not to disparage that effort, but you can see where protest really matters. Like, you can see when the stakes are genuinely higher in places like this, and what those, I guess, young women are doing is just bravery personified, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, in any regime where the police are going to come looking for you because you're dancing, that's not a good look.
What was the movie that dancing was illegal? Was that Footloose?
Footloose.
Or was it Footloose?
Yeah, Footloose.
Everybody
the town band dancing, and that just kicked everything off. It was all downhill from there.
What was the other one? There was two in a row. Was it Footloose and Dirty Dancing? Were they the two that were released at the same time?
They're close to, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay, let's move on, because we like talking comedy. So let's talk about the National Party at the moment. So Consumer Affairs Minister Dr. Duncan Webb has said some things that have upset some National Party MPs. Let's have a listen to the scrum where the thing was actually said to start off with.
We're actively considering that at the moment, but we want to do that in a careful, deliberate manner. If we do a market study into banks, we want to get the funding right.
He does look a bit like Where's Wally, eh? Just a little bit.
Taking advice from the Commerce Commission and officials on that.
And so, I guess, what specifically for the layperson, what are some of those considerations? Why can't it just happen immediately?
So they're talking about the banking
it's really
regulation
important to know where to
investigation.
look. The scope of the inquiry, whether it's into mortgage rates or whether it's a more broad-based inquiry, but we're certainly not going to let the banks off the hook. We're not going to do a quick and dirty inquiry from politicians.
I don't believe
we want to
you.
use experts. If we do an
Well, I think that's pointed at Nicola Willis, because remember, Nicola Willis said that they wanted a short and sharp inquiry that was narrow in scope. In other words, it was almost as if they were saying, let's have the appearance of looking into it, but if it's short and sharp and narrow, you're not looking at very much, are you? You're not looking at very much. I wonder if that was a reference back to what National was talking about.
market study. It'll be using the Commerce Commission and all the resources and skills that they've got.
Is a market study the reason why government MPs have voted down kind of a proposed inquiry into competition in the sector?
No, the reason that was voted down is because a quick and dirty study gets the banks off the hook. It's the National Party trying to make something once over lightly, and that's not good enough.
They say they're acting in good faith.
Well, look, we know where their loyalties lie, and we're concerned that banks are not giving a fair deal to consumers. And if a market study is needed and appropriate, that's what we'll do.
Where do their loyalties lie?
Oh, look, they lie with the big end of town.
There you go. That's the comment. National's loyalties lie with the big end of town. So this is the story that's come from. Dr. Webb, who became the minister earlier this year on Tuesday morning, said National's proposal was voted down as a quick and dirty study that lets the banks off the hook. It's the National Party trying to make something once over lightly, and that's not good enough. We know where their loyalties lie. He said those loyalties lie at the big end of town. Nicola Willis later on Tuesday said that was a, quote, reprehensible comment.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, Petal.
What is it Macbeth? I think the lady doth to protesteth too much. Is that Macbeth?
Reprehensible.
Reprehensible. If this is reprehensible, I wonder what something really bad actually is. Anyway, Willis said it was reprehensible, and she says he was loyal to New Zealanders. As things stand, Duncan Webb has done nothing, she says. I won't be corrected by him when he hasn't initiated any action on this. Remember, this started last week, right? This started last week. He hasn't done anything yet. Where our loyalties lie are with seeing the market is operating effectively. That's that there is good competition and New Zealanders are getting a fair deal. Now, remember, good competition last week when we talked about this meant let's get some American banks in here. They talked about it. Luxon talked about it. Seymour talked about it. Their competition was, why haven't we opened up New Zealand to some foreign banks? That's what they were talking about. Dr. Webb is standing by his comments. We know that the National Party policies, tax cuts for the rich, they speak for themselves. I'm here to look at what we can do for ordinary New Zealanders, those who need it most, he said. A select committee inquiry would politicize the process. It doesn't have the expertise to do the job. If we are going to look into banks, then we need to do it through a market study, which is the expertise and the time to do the analysis that is needed to make sure that we get the gains that are there. Willis said a select committee inquiry would get the answers fast, and interviews with witnesses would put out in public rather than behind closed doors. I can't explain why they won't allow a select committee to do its fundamental duty, which is to get answers to questions to New Zealand that New Zealanders are asking, Willis said. So,
what questions are we asking, Pat?
yeah, I'm not entirely sure about that. But what I see is, and look, I think it's fair for me to say, Chewy, I don't know if you agree with this, is that I don't actually know which one of those is correct. 100% which is correct.
No, that's fair.
But what National feels like they're doing is playing theatre. Like what National feels like they're doing is what you see in America when Marjorie Taylor Greene stands up holding a sign saying, "What is a woman?" That kind of feels like what it is, speaking to their base and trying to score points about someone to answer the questions that New Zealanders want and have answered. That's what it feels like. Now, I could be wrong with that. But it seems like what Labour's saying is this is a specialist area that needs to be investigated by specialists. And what National is saying is we want to ask the questions that the public want answered. And I don't necessarily think either is wrong, but I kind of feel like, remember, National asking for an investigation into the banks would be like Labour doing tax cuts for the rich. It's just not their wheelhouse. And I'm still trying to work out what exactly they're doing, other than perhaps, as I said earlier, about the short and sharp, narrow scope investigation, have the appearance to the public of doing something whilst not necessarily wanting or needing the answers.
Yeah.
Chewy.
Look, the New Zealanders have got questions about the banks. Sure. Why are they allowed to extract so many funds? So much funds when everybody's doing it tough. Yeah, that's my only question. Answer me that. Why did we sell all our banks to the Australians? Why did we allow that to happen? Who's next on the chopping block for that? If we're allowing foreign banks to come into our market, who and why and what do they have to do? As many people in the chat are pointing out, why the fuck would we want an American bank here?
Yeah.
What possible benefit? Like, we know what foreign-owned banks do. They remove money from New Zealand. That is what they do. So why would we want to invite another one in?
It's probably a good point to say, it's a little bit maybe like the vegan conversation, what we can do ourselves. Now, I know that it's not easy for everyone just to move away from their bank, but, Kiwi Bank, Cooperative, SBS,
Yes.
TSB, these are the ones that are New Zealand owned and keeping profits in New Zealand. The building societies, like I'm SBS for my mortgage, you actually get a return occasionally from them as well because they're a building society. And there would be ways that we as New Zealanders could help that. Like if we want, this is a silly example, but if every New Zealander took their money out of the Australian banks and put them into New Zealand banks, there'd be no profits going offshore to Australia. I mean, that's the extreme that can't happen, but we could make a difference one by one. I guess similar to that conversation we had earlier with Vegan Society, making a difference one by one. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Pat, I've solved it. I just had a thought. Nationalize them. Nationalize the banks. I'm just saying we could do this tomorrow. But yeah, look, you got to walk. You can't bitch about the banks and then continue to bank with one of them. The big four Australian banks. What have they done for me lately? I moved all of my banking to Co-op. They're great.
I want to say to Gareth and to others as well, being really transparent. There was lots of banks who wouldn't look at us, wouldn't look at me. So I know I'm with SBS now, but it's almost a byproduct because, to be honest, when I went through a divorce and I was struggling to get finance to keep my house, I would have signed with anyone. So I guess I'm not saying that from you should be like me, dicks, because if it had been an Australian bank or lose my house, of course I would have gone with an Australian bank. So it's more circumstantial than anything at the moment. But I guess the reality is I am with them. And yes, I get a little brown envelope every single week, Gareth. It's 150 times every time I say SBS.
Yeah.
It comes to the back door.
Look, that's a really good point. when I was looking at getting a mortgage, Kiwi Bank wouldn't touch me. They were the first people that I looked at. And yeah, but mainly the reason is that I guess their pockets weren't deep enough for that level of risk. Whereas one of the big Aussie banks were like, yeah, sure, cool, we'll take another one.
And I
Sure,
guess
no worries.
that's the flip side to international money, I guess. But they can probably spread their risk because they've not just got portfolios in New Zealand of mortgages, but Australia and perhaps all around the world. Maybe that's a part of it. I'm not trying to now talk them up. I'm just trying to be honest about the reality of what each side sort of means.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, Rob Burney taking a big swing at me from the chat, you bastard. He disagrees with me, which I think is a reprehensible thing to say. We live in a society, and sometimes you have to deal with companies we don't like. Absolutely. But then you can start up a podcast and shit talk them, and they can't do anything about it.
Hey, remember he's a senior producer. You can't say bad things.
And I'd also like to conclude that rant by saying, I'm sorry, sir. Please come again.
All right. Come again. Let's get on to our next story, which is actually, I'm going to kind of change the order a bit because it makes more sense to stay with the political scene, because you may not have heard this, Chewy, but Christopher Luxon had a terrible poll result yesterday for leader. You hadn't heard that?
Bugger. Then he got the COVID.
So, well, I mean, genuinely, hope he's all right with that. We don't.
I know it's just a shitty way to start a week.
Yeah.
You've got COVID, and by the way, here's the poll results.
I wasn't going to talk about this, but have you seen the conspiracy theories about him getting COVID?
That he got COVID so he could not field all the media on his poll results.
This is a conspiracy theory that neither I nor, and I'm going to speak on behalf to adhere to, but there are people now thinking that he hasn't got COVID and he's just looking for a way to start to move backwards. Like, I've had a really bad run of it. I'm going to be under weather for the next 3 to 6 months. I've got long COVID. I'm stepping aside. That's a conspiracy theory going around at the moment. I saw it on Twitter and someone went, dude, just leave the conspiracy theories to the alt-right.
Yeah.
Right. That's where they belong.
Personally, if you're going to go with a theory like that, go big. You know, he hasn't got COVID. He's not doing media because Judith Collins has finally snapped and killed him.
Maybe.
And they're just trying to come up with a cover story.
Maybe
keep Judith out of jail.
Maybe he's been fed that same stuff that those Iranian teenagers have been getting fed. Maybe that's why he's feeling bad. All right, let's move on. So anyway, terrible poll result yesterday for Luxon. Doesn't mean anything when it comes to the election. Long way to go. What it means is that was a snapshot of the last couple of weeks. That's it. But it was a terrible snapshot for him. And now, of course, the question's coming to all his MPs. Are you behind Christopher Luxon?
Christopher Luxon, the right man for the job?
Yes, he is. Me and our team have 100% confidence in him.
Is he going to last till the election?
Blinking.
Yes, he is.
What about you? Is it time for you?
He's not only going to last till the election, he is going to be the Prime Minister that New Zealand needs at a critical time. We have an economy that is going backwards. And while we...
Am I right that it sounds like the email went around this morning with the talking points? Like that
was just so good. Right. We'll get through this question and talking points.
I have to say as well, and I don't ever really criticize people on getting things wrong. So my team and I, this is the example where me is not the correct one. Sometimes me is correct, but not in this instance.
Do you know what this interview is reminding me of?
We have a
What?
You've seen Gone Girl?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, Ben Affleck, the husband, kills his wife and then goes to the media about how she's missing.
Okay.
Just saying. I'm just putting it out there.
Free Soul says that body language is the opposite, head shaking. So we'll go to a couple of seconds and then let it play through.
It's so much
He
blinking.
is going to be the Prime Minister that New Zealand needs at a critical time. We have an economy that is going backwards. And while we have a government that's putting band-aids on the issues, what's actually needed is a new driver behind the seat. And I have faith that Chris Luxon, with his record of experience and delivery, is the man for the moment.
Should you be the leader of the National Bank?
I want to be the next finance minister of this country. That's what I'm working hard for, and I'm very pleased to be working with Chris Luxon.
He has dropped 5%. Is that concerning?
No, look, the past couple of months in politics, as anyone would observe, have been unusual. There's rightly been a focus on cyclone recovery and rebuild. That's provided less opportunities for Chris Luxon and our team to be talking about our plans for the future.
That's
but what
very
New Zealanders can
unfair
look
of the
forward to over the
cyclone.
next 7 months.
No. Yes, fair enough the last 3 weeks. He's been leader for a year. What about the other 11 months? This is the point. They're trying to spin it like, no, of course there was going to be a bump because cyclone. It's like, no, you've been doing this for 12 months. What about the other 11 months? What happens if something else goes on to take the focus off you and you haven't spent the other 11 months getting your messaging across? So no, don't play that. Yes, it's a bad poll because 3 weeks we couldn't get our words out there. Well, actually, he did a State of the Nation speech. He spoke at Ratana. You know, he's been out there shoveling stuff in the press. He's been around. He's been visible. They released a policy last week, so I'm not buying. I'm not buying.
As us talking about great ideas for turning this country around and delivering people to higher incomes, lower cost of living, better health and education services, better infrastructure, and higher standards of law and order that we know they want.
You're not worried about this poll at all?
No.
No concern?
And is Christopher Luxon still the man for the job, and will he last?
Christopher Luxon will be the next Prime Minister of New Zealand.
Why is it that the more that New Zealanders get to know Christopher Luxon, the less they like him?
I don't think that's correct. I think the more they get to know him, and maybe that's our job to make sure New Zealanders get to know more of him. I see the man that you don't see. I see the man after hours and get to have those conversations. And I think if New Zealanders can see that, they'll be as impressed as I am.
What's he doing if he hasn't been getting that well known the last year? Has he been...
Oh, he's been very busy. You've been with him at the time, and you've
Hang on. Nicola Willis was just saying we haven't had time to get enough in the media. Shane's now saying he's been really, really busy. So what if he hasn't had enough time to get in the media and he's been really, really busy? What has he been busy doing? It sounds like there's a bit of a mixed message there. So New Zealand doesn't know him yet. It was a fantastic question. I don't know if you missed it out there, but they basically said the more people get to know Christopher Luxon, the less they like him. That was the comment from the journalist.
Great comment.
Yeah, and it's like he's been very, very busy. Well, what busy letting people get him to know? That's his job. His only job for the last 12 months is getting New Zealanders to know him. And what the poll showed last week for that 2-week period is it hasn't worked so far. In fact, it's starting to go backwards. Yeah. So all of this pablum about, it's not fair. And they don't say it's not fair. It's my paraphrase. It's not fair. We haven't had enough, coverage. We haven't had enough, no noise made about us. And, cyclone, rightfully so. Notice they're saying rightfully so, because if they criticize it, they'd do a Simon Bridges and COVID and be gone by lunchtime. But this is not, these two messages are not aligning. He's either been really busy and the country can't have seen him, right? Or he hasn't been. But he spent a year telling us why he's the guy.
What Dr. Reed is saying here, though, is that he's a totally rad, awesome dude as soon as he clocks out.
Cowabunga, dude.
Yeah, 9 to 5. Yeah, but you don't see the fucking guy who's doing shoeys and doing TikTok dances and is really cool and likable and genuine.
I don't ever want to hear the phrase when it's associated with Christopher Luxon is doing chewy again. I don't ever want to hear
doing a shoey.
Yeah, doing chewy is what you said, and I don't want to hear that again.
No, you're misquoting me there, Pat.
Whatever
experienced interviewer, I don't want you twisting my words. I said doing a chewy.
Yeah, whatever fantasies you have about being chewy done, I don't want to hear them ever again. We'll go to the vote. Go to the vote in the text. See what people say.
I said shoey.
All right, we'll keep going.
We've seen how busy he's been. A very busy leader, and it just
too busy over the past 12 months
to portray what Chris Luxon is really about and how good he really is.
So therefore, National's been doing a shithouse job, is what Dr. Retti's saying. So you've spent 12 months not letting New Zealand know how amazing this guy is. So who the fuck are your PR people, if that's the case? Who are your communications people? Who are your speech writers? It's been 12 months, and you're saying we haven't done a good job letting people know who he is. Well, that's on you, baby. Sorry.
No, he's still only been in the job for a year and a bit, and so it's still early in the piece. And as I say, there are still many parts and many facets of Chris Luxon to be revealed to the public, and I'm impressed, and I stand behind him.
He started on 17%. He's now on 17%. I mean, is the issue he's not a good salesperson?
No, I don't think it's that. I think there's been a lot of issues that have sort of removed the opportunity for us to tell more of Chris Luxon's story. Clearly, Cyclone, we had Ratana, we had Waitangi, various parts of this year that haven't given us the opportunity to quite tell more of the Chris Luxon story, and we're looking forward to doing that.
You very much spoke at Ratana.
Yes, he did. Delivered an excellent speech. Yes, indeed. But it was on. But it was because it was on issues that were relevant to Māori particularly. He may want to have a broader breadth of scope and show more parts of him. Those was particularly theme-based, if you like, events.
But his popularity was tanking by the end of last year, and that was before all of this.
I'm looking forward to New Zealanders seeing more of Chris Luxon, and they'll like it as much as I do.
Sorry, I don't want to see more.
Topless on a horse.
Oh,
Like
some of those
who?
conversations I have are conversations that will stay between myself and Chris, and it'll be for him to reveal those sides of him.
What does that mean?
What that means is that I don't discuss conversations I have with colleagues, and it will be for him to bring forward to New Zealanders those parts of his personality, his theme, and his vision that he wants to
The
share.
only way that Christopher Luxon can get Mike just to have private conversations with people, he's not going to win an election with freedom.
It's for him then to reveal those things to the wider public. I'm impressed with the conversations.
So you don't want to tell us your favourite thing about Christopher Luxon?
It's definitely his blue eyes. Right, let's move on.
Jesus, that was bad.
Yeah, I don't feel sorry for them, but it's not a good look, And I guess to be fair, mind you, the then Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern didn't have that because she was still the number one. She still had she was still highest rating. She was the most preferred Prime Minister still when she resigned. So I guess she didn't have those questions.
The vast majority of people,
as strongly.
When they were asked about her and stuff like that, people found her authentic, and that's really hard for a politician to come out and get. I think it's probably one of the most valuable traits that a politician can have is to be authentic, because they're not going to be able to say the full unvarnished truth all the time.
Yep.
But to do that and be authentic, Chris Luxon absolutely cannot do that, and he's inexperienced, and he keeps on failing.
Yeah,
it's a death knell.
Finn says this is a man who doesn't believe the bullshit he's peddling. I think that's a pretty good one. JN says they're hiding the fact he's boring.
They're not hiding it. It's right out there.
Well. Yeah. The thing is, I don't care about boring. I mean, who cares about boring? I mean, I know that's harder to win an election, but boring doesn't matter.
You say boring. I think of Bill English.
Yeah.
Now, again, I do not agree with his politics, but I understand the position that he's coming from. He's not an exciting politician, but I would certainly trust what he was saying, and then we were seeing an authentic version of him more than I would say Christopher Luxon is.
Speaking of leaders, today for the Friday night show, I sent emails to Chris Hipkins, Martin Davidson, Debbie Ngaruapaka, David Seymour, Christopher Luxon, the guy from TOP, the guy from the New Zealand Democracy Party, Mike King, I think it is, to potentially come on the Friday night show, the long form podcast that I do, which is political leanings. We'll see. I suspect we'll get a few of them. I suspect we'll probably get Chippy. I suspect we probably won't get Luxon. And I think after our last conversation with Seymour, I think, Seymour does seem to turn up to things, even if he hates you. I think we may get Seymour. I don't think we'll get Luxon, personally, because he won't be there, HOE. Is that right? So should we get Nicola Willis? Should I put him one in there now?
Yeah, okay, we'd love to get the leader of the opposition on and just send it to her email and nobody else's. See what happens.
Let us have a quick look at this next story before we wrap up with talking about Last of Us. This is a super quick one. There's not really a massive story with this, but this is some research done by the Cantor Public Poll 1 News looking into climate change urgency. This has happened after the floods in the top of the North Island. And it's quite a look, act with less urgency, only 10%. So when we've talked about Christopher Luxon and some people on the right not liking his adherence to a whole bunch of climate change situations, I think that will hurt him, but he's certainly reading the room right. Because continue as planned or act with more urgency is 54%. Half of all New Zealanders want this to pick up and act with more urgency. I suspect that this is perhaps one of the reasons you saw a bump in the Green Party vote. Although in saying that, not to beat a dead horse, that's only looking at those 2 weeks. And we'll see the next poll. We want to see the trends, but it almost feels like if the Greens can take this climate change urgency message away from Labor, maybe that's how they end up with 12, 13, 14, 15%. Maybe it's where they are. Because if you see that, what's that, 70, 81% either want it to stay as planned or act with more urgency. And of that 81%, 3/4 of them want it to be act with more urgency. There's a constituency.
It's pretty overwhelming.
Yeah, there's
it's
a
pretty overwhelming. Or we're misreading this terribly. And as I do it for you, says it's actually 54% of New Zealanders want ACT more urgently.
They want ACT urgently.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that one, eh? I'm not sure.
We'll keep an eye on this, and this, I guess, dovetails into our first conversation to make a beautifully tailored show. Doves into our first conversation about climate change. Segue. Hey, thanks for joining us tonight. We aren't quite wrapped up yet. We're going to have a talk about Last of Us. I don't think we're going to do any spoilers, but if you don't want to know anything, maybe this is your time to say sayonara. But before we do that, let's say a big thanks to our patrons. I'm sure Rob will be sending you some notes tonight, Chewy, as our senior producer. Producers, super patrons, coffee runners, and FUELs, fuel level patrons. If you want to be involved, patreon.com/Big Hairy News. I think I'm pretty comfortable saying this. We're the only left-wing news commentary show on the internet on as regularly as we are. And also that is as open as this. Even if you said there's some other ones out there doing something like us, I don't think anyone does it like us and includes you guys as much as we include, live commentary. You guys make up half the show. We actually don't do much work. If you actually went back in time to all the times we spoke, with the times we read your messages, about 90% of the time is us reading your messages. So we don't actually do really any work at all.
What the patron money has enabled us to do, and I mean, we haven't spoken about this before, but we've been actually able to buy some property with it.
Yeah.
We now live rent free in Sean Plunkett's head.
Yeah, it's true actually.
So there's that.
Apparently, Plunkett's been talking about me on his show. What did I get told? I got sent a message by someone that said
he sweeps floors.
something like Pat Brittenden used to sweep the floors at Newstalk ZB or something. So yeah, living rent free in Plunkett's head. It's hilarious. Very, very good. Thanks, Karen, if you're watching. Okay, so Last of Us, all finished, all done. I read a few things. I didn't read any articles before I watched it, Chewy, but I saw before I watched it that there was some commentary around how the action was happening, and so I kind of got a bit of a gist that it would be a big finale, a big number. And it was really good. Now, here's a question for you, right? This won't put too many spoilers. The first scene when the baby was born, that doesn't tell you anything, by the way. Do you think there was a face swap in that? Was it her face on her mother, or was it a completely separate actress? Because when I watched it for the first time, I was like, oh, is this in the future or is this in the past? Is this in the future with a face swap? Or
she actually just has a pretty good likeness. Right. That woman is actually the video game's voice actress for Ellie. So that's one of the things that I've really appreciated about the show, is that they've incorporated a lot of the voice actors into the actual show. We've seen Joel, we've seen Ellie. The person that played Marlene is actually Marlene in the game.
Oh wow!
It's a nice nod to what had gone before. And what I found really interesting as someone who has played the game is, as soon as Ellie's on screen, and the voice actor for Ellie is on screen, giving birth and obviously grunting and crying and all of that sort of stuff, you could tell it was the voice actor, because it was it was just straight from the game. It was really, really good.
Can I just say as well, kind of hilarious, we've just lost sort of half of our live views. So obviously,
nope, haven't seen it yet.
Good on you. But we're going to try our best not to spoil it. I don't think that spoils anything, saying that what that actually bit was. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was quite a good wrap up. It was enough to move into the next season. Now, you said, is there definitely only going to be 2 seasons? Because I can't imagine something as successful at the end as this, HBO getting to the end of 2 seasons and going, oh yeah, we'll just throw away the golden goose.
they have really heavily lent on the storyline of the games, and for people that have played the games, that's been a good thing. There's only 2 games, so I don't think they will do anything more than season 2.
All right. I do like how places like the UK do tend to do that. 15 episodes and they're done.
I'm a big fan of just like write a successful story arc and walk away on top rather than ride something into the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, no, very good. And most importantly, I just thought we should put this up really, really quickly. Sorry. I'm done. I'm back. Any thoughts on it? Any thoughts on the wrap up? Any thoughts on where to from here? And do we know when season 2 is coming out? Are we going to have to wait a full kind of 11 months, or are they going to do it sort of in a 6-month mode?
I'm under the impression it's in production now.
Okay.
They do have the luxury that there is a bit of a time jump just after the start of the second game, so they can actually have the Ellie's actress Bella Ramsey at her actual age rather than trying to age her down to 14 to 15. She'd be 19 to 20. So yeah, I'm not expecting it quick. I don't think we'll see it in 12 months.
I was going to show you. I don't know where it was from, but I saw as in when it was from, I should say. I saw Bella Ramsey on Graham Norton, and I was going to play it if I could find it, because she does a very, very, very good American accent.
I love that
very,
when you
very
get
good.
When you get actors who's the other one? The guy that plays Spider-Man is another one for me.
I'm wrong. It wasn't Graham Norton. It was James Corden. So for people who don't know,
don't put James Corden on.
I have to. I'm sorry. I have to. It's the rules. I have to.
I hate that man.
I want people to hear her accent, like her real speaking voice, if they haven't heard it.
We've been greeted. It's just rained every day.
It's nice. It's quite British.
Yeah, it really is.
Weird,
it does feel like home, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does. Now we're into a new year, 2020. Yes.
But I'm trying vitamin.
It's crazy. Now, Bella, we're so thrilled you're here. We're all such huge fans. You are from a part of the United Kingdom called Leicestershire. Now, lovely part of the country. Now, some British actors struggle with an American accent, but yours is absolutely brilliant. How did you get your accent in such great shape?
I had a dialect coach, which was helpful, and we started. The first phrase I mastered was olive oil.
Olive oil.
It's really hard, olive oil, and then that was my olive oil.
There you go. That'll probably get us booted off YouTube. But I just thought it's always fascinating when you're not. I mean, I saw her on Game of Thrones, obviously, as the young person in charge of that family. But watching her in the whole series, and then hearing her real voice, wow, she does a really good American accent. So yeah.
I love that when you get British actors and all you see them do is American stuff, and then in the interviews they're rocking their raw accent. The guy that plays Spider-Man is a big one for me. I love hearing him.
I nearly hear Tobey Maguire showing my age. Tom Holland,
that's the one. Yeah. His interviews are great because you're like, oh, that's what he sounds like.
And he reveals the intimate secrets of all the films he's in as well. That's a great.
Oh, I love it. Absolutely.
All right, team. So hopefully we didn't spoil it. We've dropped another half. That's The Last of Us. It's done for this year, and I guess we're going to have to find a new thing to talk about every week. I'm not quite sure what we're going to have, a new series. Have you watched White Lotus yet?
I have not watched White Lotus, but what I have finished watching is Poker Face, which is excellent.
Poker Face.
Very, very good.
A poker face. All right, I think we're done. Hey, thanks for joining us, guys. I think we'll be back tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. Hopefully, we'll have some news for you around the new leader of the National Party by then. I'm thinking probably Nicola Willis by about 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon will be the leader. And then apparently, you're going to have to go do your own research because we did not put a wager on it. If we did, you're getting close to getting paid.
It's a bottle of something I recall. Look, it's not. No, I'm not taking. No, not taking that. I'll take a full one.
Okay. We'll see you tomorrow night from 9. Thanks for joining us, team. We enjoyed being with you. We enjoyed the conversation. And we will see you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. Hooroo.
Cheers, fam.